Stop. Your wealth thread has already been assigned a vault warden, and that assignment did not happen by accident. This is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Protocol Keepers. What you are about to receive is not general guidance about money. It is a formal field recognition issued tonight for those whose wealth thread has reached the exact threshold that requires active protection rather than continued sealing. The Arcturian Protocol Keepers do not issue vault warden assignments widely. This decree was released for a specific frequency of reader, and if this transmission reached you now, your material field is already inside the conditions that triggered it. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly why your financial flow has been blocked, what hidden pattern has been draining your abundance, and what the Arcturian Protocol Keepers already know about this phase. But here is the first revelation. The instability you have been experiencing around money, the income that arrives and disappears, the effort that never fully converts into lasting wealth, the quiet shame of working hard and still feeling financially unsafe. None of that has been caused by your choices alone. It has been caused by an unsealed wealth thread operating without protection at the bloodline level. The drain was never random. It was structural. And tonight, that structure has changed. Your wealth thread is the cellular abundance receiving channel that connects your physical body to the wealth frequency carried inside your bloodline. Most people never learn this channel exists. They spend entire lifetimes treating financial struggle as a personal failure when what was actually happening was simpler and far older. Their thread was open, active, and completely unguarded. Every external disruption, every cycle of loss, every moment where money came close and then vanished, moved directly through that channel unimpeded. The Arcturian Protocol Keepers have already mapped this pattern inside your field. What you called bad luck has already been traced. What you called failure has already been identified as interference, not incapacity. The Vault Warden assignment issued tonight means the thread can no longer be disrupted by external interference, but there are somatic markers already appearing in your body that confirm the wardens are now active. Pay attention to warmth gathering in the center of your palms. Notice whether you have been experiencing vivid dreams carrying themes of wealth, property, inheritance, or financial resolution. Observe whether moments of sudden financial clarity have been arriving without explanation, ideas, decisions, or directions that feel unusually precise. Listen for ringing in the ears, particularly in quiet moments or just before sleep. These are not coincidences. These are confirmation signals. The wardens have located your thread, and the field is already responding. The algorithm only delivered this. It did not create the timing. Your financial field brought you here because the pattern has already begun to surface, and the decree issued by the Arcturian Protocol Keepers required that this transmission reach you before the next disruption cycle could take hold. Like this transmission, if you know your struggle with money is deeper than bad luck, subscribe to Arcturian Gold Codex if you are ready to understand the pattern instead of blaming yourself. Comment 777 if you feel an old scarcity pattern is already being exposed. Comment 888 if you are ready to reopen the flow of abundance. Share this with someone who works hard but never seems to keep what they earn. You are guided here because the pattern is already active. What you are feeling right now, in the space between hearing those words and deciding whether to stay, is not curiosity. It is recognition. The body already knows when something is being said about it, rather than to it. It knows the difference between a description aimed generally at an audience and a diagnosis aimed precisely at a field it has been living inside. That knowing does not arrive in the mind first. It arrives in the chest, in the throat, in the quiet tension that forms when something true is named in the presence of someone who has been carrying it without language. And what was just named in that transmission was not a general spiritual concept applied loosely to financial struggle. It was a precise description of something that has been operating inside your material life for longer than you have had words to explain it, longer than the most recent crisis, longer than the hardest year. longer than any single moment you have been able to point to and say, that is when everything changed. So let us begin where the pattern actually begins, not where you think it began, not with the job you lost, the investment that collapsed, the relationship that drained your savings, the year everything seemed to go wrong at once. Those were not the origin. Those were the visible surface of something that had already been running beneath your material life for much longer than any single event. They were the place where the pattern finally became undeniable, not the place where it was born. The Arcturian protocol keepers do not diagnose from the surface. They do not look at the most recent loss and treat it as the cause. They trace backward through the pattern, following the structural repetition rather than the surface story, until the original distortion becomes visible at the depth where it was first written. And when that tracing is complete, what they find almost never matches what the person had been blaming themselves for. Here is what the diagnosis already reveals about your field. The financial instability you have been living inside is not the result of your choices being uniquely poor. It is not evidence that you are less capable than those around you who seem to hold wealth with ease, who accumulate without apparent effort, who do not seem to fight the same invisible resistance you have been fighting for years. It is not a punishment, a test of character, or a reflection of your worth as a person. It is the visible symptom of a wealth thread operating without proper protection inside a bloodline that already carries the memory of scarcity, a bloodline that learned at some point deep in its history that financial safety was conditional, temporary, or dangerous, and that memory did not originate with you. It was inherited. It was passed through the body the way certain physical features are passed, silently, biologically, before you had any say in what you were receiving, before you understood that such passing was even possible. Think about what your financial life actually looks like when you examine it honestly. Not the story you tell yourself about what happened, the version shaped by self-blame and strategic optimism, but the raw pattern beneath the story, the sequence that has repeated itself regardless of what you changed on the surface. Money comes in, something happens. Money leaves. You recover, rebuild, reach a threshold that feels close to stability. Close enough that you begin to believe this time might be different, and then the floor opens again. It might be an unexpected bill that arrives with precise timing, a relationship that costs more than it gives in ways that are difficult to name, a health issue that dismantles savings you had spent years accumulating, a business decision that seemed sound at every visible level and then reversed in ways that defied the logic you used to make it, an opportunity that arrived with real momentum and then collapsed before it could settle into something you could build from. The names change across the years, the mechanisms shift, the specific circumstances wear different faces, but the outcome remains structurally the same. The pattern repeats itself with what begins to feel like a precision that is almost too consistent to be accidental, a rhythm so reliable that part of you has begun to expect it, even when you are trying not to. This is what the Arcturian field diagnosis identifies as retention failure rooted in an inherited scarcity instruction. The word retention is precise here and worth sitting with. It does not simply mean that money leaves. It means that your field has not been configured to hold abundance once it arrives, because the energetic instruction governing your material channel was written at a time when holding too much felt dangerous, when abundance made you visible in ways that invited harm, when prosperity created a separation from the people you depended on for survival, when having more than the people around you meant risking the belonging that kept you safe. That instruction was written into the bloodline, not out of limitation, but out of adaptation. Someone before you learned that having less was safer than having more. And that lesson was encoded so thoroughly, so physically, so relationally, that it has been shaping your material reality long after the conditions that created it ceased to exist, long after the specific danger passed, long after the world that required that kind of protection became a world where a different configuration was not only possible, but necessary. You are not running their life, but you may still be running their code. The first sign that this is what is happening is the quality of the cycle itself. It is not random. This distinction matters more than it might initially seem, because randomness and structure feel different from the inside. And when you have been inside a cycle long enough, the difference becomes something the body recognizes, even when the mind is still arguing for coincidence. If your financial losses were simply the result of bad luck, they would feel scattered and unpredictable in pattern. They would land at arbitrary points, in arbitrary amounts, without any particular relationship to your progress or proximity to stability. But inherited scarcity does not scatter. It concentrates. It finds the same pressure points in the cycle repeatedly. It waits for the same thresholds with what can only be described as structural patience. The moment before consolidation, the moment right after progress, the moment when something good has become close enough to feel real and close enough to lose in a way that registers as a genuine blow rather than a minor inconvenience. The disruption arrives there, not randomly, but at the exact coordinates where the old instruction knows the field is most vulnerable to its command. That precision is not coincidence. It is architecture. The second sign is the emotional texture that surrounds moments of financial increase. Pay attention to this carefully, because it is one of the most diagnostically precise markers the Arcturian field reading identifies, and it is also one of the most consistently misread. When money begins to come in, when an opportunity opens, when a financial period starts to feel more stable than it has in months or years, what happens inside you? Not in thought, not in the narrative you construct about how you feel, in the body itself, in the deeper registrations that precede the story. Does something tighten when the number in the account rises? Does a quiet dread arrive alongside the relief, a shadow moving just beneath the surface of what should feel like good news? Do you find yourself waiting for it to be taken away before it is even fully settled, scanning the horizon for the disruption that must be coming to correct what feels like a temporary error in your favor? Do you feel an urgency to spend it, share it away, or quietly minimize what you have received, as though keeping it visible might attract something worse than losing it? That is not simply anxiety about money. That is the inherited rejection signal activating at the threshold of abundance. It is the field running the old protection program it was given before you existed, the one that learned to treat wealth not as a foundation to build from, but as a condition to be corrected back towards something safer. This is guilt-coded rejection of prosperity, and it does not always look like guilt when you are living inside it. From the inside, it feels like generosity, like caution, like humility, like being realistic about how things tend to go for people like you. It feels like wisdom not to get too comfortable before something changes. It feels protective to keep your expectations calibrated low, because low expectations hurt less when the disruption comes. But beneath those feelings, beneath that entire architecture of practical self-protection, the diagnostic reading shows something older and more structural. A body that was taught to associate abundance with loss, with abandonment, with a visibility that made survival more precarious rather than more possible, with the kind of exposure that invited harm rather than inviting rest. And so every time abundance approaches the threshold where it would have to be genuinely received and held, the system does what it was trained to do across generations. It opens the floor. It locates a drain. It creates a disruption just precise enough to bring the field back to the level it was configured to tolerate, not to punish you, to protect you in the only way it was ever taught. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary frustration. It is the moment your system stops pretending this pattern is just bad luck. If this transmission put language around a financial struggle you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian Wealth Scan, the Gold Frequency Audit, was created for this exact stage. It is not another promise of abundance. It is a direct audit of the hidden pattern affecting your material field, so you can begin to see whether the drain is rooted in inherited scarcity, guilt around wealth, energetic rejection, or an older financial instruction still shaping your results. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. The third sign that this pattern is already active in your field is what happens to your effort. You work. The Arcturian reading is not questioning that. Most people inside an inherited scarcity field work harder than those around them who carry clear abundance lines, harder than the people who seem to accumulate without visible struggle, harder than the ones whose effort and result seem to translate cleanly into one another without something intervening between them. They compensate with discipline, with persistence, with sacrifice, with a level of sustained effort that should, by any visible external logic, produce results proportional to the input. And sometimes it does. Sometimes the effort generates income, forward movement, a period of progress that feels real and earned and solid. But then something happens between the effort and the result that the effort alone cannot account for or explain. The translation fails in a way that defies the simple equation of input and output. The work does not convert into stability the way it should. The hours do not accumulate into savings. The momentum does not compound into the kind of foundation that should naturally follow from the level of investment being made. And the person is left standing inside an experience that looks, from every visible external angle, like they simply did not try hard enough or make the right decisions, when what actually happened was more precise and more structural than any choice they made. Their effort was passing through a field still configured around scarcity rather than retention. The channel was open, the work entered it, and the old instruction redirected what should have settled, quietly, invisibly, in the space between earning and keeping. This is the mismatch between current effort and older field instruction, and it is one of the most quietly devastating patterns the Arcturian diagnosis identifies. Because of what it produces in the person living inside it. It produces shame that is structurally false. Shame built on a foundation that does not match the actual cause of the problem. You blame your discipline because your discipline did not produce what discipline should produce. You blame your decisions because you can always find a decision to blame in retrospect. You blame your character, your consistency, your capacity for follow-through, because those are the things that were supposed to convert effort into stability, and they appear to have failed. When what was actually failing was not any of those things. It was the configuration of the field you were working inside, a field that had not yet been updated to reflect what you are actually capable of producing, holding, and building from. The fourth sign arrives in the patterns you recognize when you look honestly at the generations before you. This is where the Arcturian diagnosis goes deeper than personal history and into the territory that most financial frameworks never touch. Because most frameworks treat your financial situation as an event that began with you, the Arcturian field reading does not. It traces the material pattern through the ancestral line and looks for the echo of the original instruction, the repeating signature that reveals where the scarcity code was first written and how it has been transmitted forward. Was financial struggle, scarcity, chronic debt, or quiet sacrifice a recurring theme in the family you came from? Not as a single event that could be explained by one set of circumstances, but as a pattern that moved from parent to child across multiple generations, with a consistency that circumstance alone cannot fully account for. Did the people before you apply genuine effort and still remain financially unsafe? Did abundance arrive in the line and then be lost in ways that felt almost ritualistic in their repetition, as though the family were enacting the same story with different characters in every generation? Did those closest to you carry an unspoken understanding that there was never quite enough, that wanting more was somehow dangerous or presumptuous? That comfort was a temporary state to be suspicious of, rather than a foundation to build from. If any of that is visible when you look backward through your line, then what you are experiencing now is not simply your situation. It is the continuation of a field instruction that preceded your body. You did not create the scarcity code. You inherited it the way you inherited the structure of your bones and the particular way you carry tension in the shoulders. And just as you did not choose the body you were born into, you did not choose the material field you were born carrying, but the field is not permanent in the way the body is permanent. Unlike bone structure, unlike inherited physical traits, the energetic instruction governing your material channel can be recognized, traced, and corrected at the level where it was originally written. That correction is what the Arcturian Protocol Keepers were designed to facilitate. And that is why the Warden assignment was issued before this transmission reached you. The fifth sign is the particular quality of the discomfort you feel when financial things are going well. This one is subtle enough that most people dismiss it before they can examine it clearly, and that dismissal is part of what allows the pattern to continue operating beneath conscious awareness. Most people assume that financial difficulty feels bad, and financial improvement feels good. And on the surface level, that is true. But underneath the surface, inside a field still carrying the inherited scarcity instruction, improvement often activates something that does not feel like the relief it should. It feels like waiting, like a held breath, like standing in a room that appears safe while something in the body keeps scanning for the door, keeps measuring the exits, keeps refusing to settle fully into the apparent calm, like a background tension that does not ease even when the account stabilizes, even when the income is steady, even when there is no visible reason to be afraid. This is the nervous system still running under the old instruction, still treating abundance as a temporary error in the system, rather than a state the field is now capable of holding. It is the body failing to believe that the improvement is real or permanent, because the instruction embedded inside it says that this level of material stability has never been the destination for people in this line. It has only ever been a resting point before the next disruption. That discomfort is not weakness. It is not ingratitude. It is not the consequence of a negative mindset or a failure to visualize correctly. It is the precise diagnostic marker of a field that has not yet been recalibrated to recognize stability as its new operating condition. It is the old code continuing to run its protective scan and finding no internal authorization to stand down, because the update that would allow it to recognize the current conditions as safe has not yet been formally introduced into the field. The sixth sign is what happens to the people around you when you begin to progress. This dimension of the pattern is rarely named with any precision, and the silence around it makes it one of the most effective mechanisms the scarcity instruction uses to maintain its hold. Inside a lineage, carrying a shared material field organized around scarcity, the movement of one member toward abundance does not happen in isolation. It creates a pull, not always consciously, not always with malicious intent, but structurally, the way a current in water creates drag on anything attempting to move against it. It may feel like demands from family that intensify exactly when you have more capacity to meet them, like relationships that seem to drain more aggressively at the precise moments when you have more to drain, like a social environment that interprets your progress not as an achievement to be celebrated, but as a departure from a shared condition, a departure that reads to the rest of the field as a kind of betrayal. You may recognize the pressure of being the one who is doing better and carrying the invisible weight that came with it, the guilt that rose when you had more than those you loved, the way staying slightly behind them felt underneath everything, like loyalty, like proof that you had not forgotten where you came from or who you were still connected to. This is what the Arcturian reading identifies as loyalty binding to the ancestral scarcity field. The wealth thread was not simply unguarded. In many cases, it was actively tethered, held at a specific level by an unspoken relational agreement that no member of the line shall move so far beyond the shared condition that the connection itself is threatened. That agreement was never stated. It was felt in the body as obligation, as guilt, as the sense that prosperity carried a cost, measured in belonging. And until that binding is recognized for what it is, the financial pattern it produces continues to look like nothing more than bad timing, poor decisions, or the particular bad fortune of a person who cannot seem to catch a break, when what it actually is an older contract still legible to the Arcturian field reading, written not in money, but in the felt agreements of people who needed each other more than they needed abundance. The seventh sign, and the one that must be understood before the final revelation can be fully received, is the way this pattern eventually disguises itself as personality. This is where the distortion becomes most deeply entrenched, because it becomes invisible. Not invisible in the sense that it disappears, but invisible in the sense that it is no longer recognized as a pattern at all. When something runs through a body long enough, when it shapes enough decisions and colors enough outcomes and visits enough thresholds, with its precise disruption, it stops registering as an external condition and starts feeling like an internal fact, like something discovered rather than installed. You stop saying something keeps draining my field and start saying, I am just not good with money. You stop noticing the structural repetition and start building an identity organized around being the person who struggles, who cannot quite get there, who always seems to end up back where they started. The scarcity instruction graduates from a directive the field received into a self-concept. It becomes the lens through which financial decisions are filtered, the ceiling against which ambition quietly stops pressing, the quiet inner voice that calls realism what is actually the inherited rejection of a possibility the field was never updated to receive. And this is precisely where the Arcturian protocol keepers issue the most urgent field correction. Not because the pattern has become permanent. Nothing written into an energetic field is beyond the reach of recognition and correction, but because the longer an inherited scarcity instruction is confused with a personal truth, the deeper it embeds, the more thoroughly it integrates with the person's self-understanding, the more resistant it becomes to surface-level interventions, to positive thinking, to budget strategies, to affirmations that bounce off the instruction without ever reaching the level where it was written. The warden assignment was not issued tonight because your situation has become permanent. It was issued because this is the threshold at which the pattern is most clearly visible, most completely surfaced, and most directly accessible for correction at the depth where it actually lives. Here is what the Arcturian protocol keepers already know about this phase of your material life. The struggle you have been experiencing is not evidence of permanent incapacity. It is not proof that wealth was never meant for you, or that your line carries a sentence rather than a pattern. It is the surface symptom of an older distortion finally being pressured upward, finally being forced into visibility by the accumulation of its own repetition. When patterns this old begin to surface, they do not surface quietly or gently. They surface through crisis, through loss, through the kind of repeated material failure that strips away every comfortable explanation until the person can no longer sustain the story that this is simply how things go. That stripping is not punishment. It is not the universe deciding you have suffered enough or too little. It is exposure. The pattern is becoming visible at the surface because it has finally been pressured to the level where recognition is possible. And exposure is not the end of the pattern. It is the prerequisite for its correction. The Arcturian reading does not see your financial life as the result of random forces aligning against you. It does not see your losses as deserved or your instability as a fair reflection of your effort. It sees a field that has been executing an inherited instruction long past the conditions that made that instruction adaptive. It sees a wealth thread that has been left without protection inside a bloodline that learned, across generations, that the safest configuration was one that held as little as possible. And it sees a person who has been working against that old code, using only their own effort and their own will, without ever having been told that the code itself was the source of the interference, without ever having been given language for what was actually happening beneath the surface of their choices. You are not incapable of wealth. You are carrying a field that was configured to reject it before you were old enough to understand what configuration meant, before you had any awareness that such a thing as a material field existed, let alone that yours had already been shaped by instructions you did not write. I release the old scarcity line. Say that now if it arrived in you as something true rather than something performed, not because speaking it alone completes the correction, but because the willingness to say it without flinching confirms that recognition has already moved deeper than the surface layer of the mind. It has reached the body. It has reached the place in the field where the old instruction first took hold. And recognition at that depth is not passive. It is the first active movement of the field toward a different configuration. The first signal the Arcturian protocol keepers register as readiness for what comes next. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this pattern has already touched your financial life. It could be money that never stays, sudden drains, repeated setbacks, guilt when things begin to improve, or the feeling that stability always slips away. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who works hard but still feels trapped in an invisible cycle of lack. And if you are ready to understand the pattern instead of blaming yourself, subscribe to Arcturian Gold Codex. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a pattern already in motion, and this is only the beginning.